Virginia Tech has a very good football team. Obviously, Justin Fuente, the head football coach, and Bud Foster, the defensive coordinator, put together a very good year. Some really good wins. North Carolina, really, I thought, probably was a completed game that they played all year. Really had Tennessee down early and, turned the ball over a few times. But, a really good football team. Defensively, it's what you expect from Bud Foster's team. They keep the pressure on you. Experience in the back end of their defense, I think, is the key to their defense. Returning starters across the board can play man, can mix it up, play some zone coverages. They've lost some guys up front, but Barron and Edmonds, extremely productive tackles for loss. So what you see with Virginia Tech is negative plays, and most offenses get, into long yardage, and Virginia Tech's one of the best in the country on third down. So consequently, for us offensively is staying in down and distance situations that keep us out of third and long, because that's where they've been very, very effective. Offensively, I think if you talk about Evans, you talk about a quarterback that is a dual threat quarterback, can run the football, big physical, a lot like Kaiser in that sense, and can throw it as well. He's got three really good receivers. I think they make up for it's crazy. I think their numbers are almost 6,000 yards between the three of them. I think Ford, Phillips, Hodges, Ford's the guy that they look to when they need to get the football. But I think tempo will be a key. They don't play quite as fast as Syracuse, but they can play tempo. They can move fast if they want to. And it's a team that wants to be balanced in terms of running the football and throwing it. Excellent kicker, about 80-90% kicks it out of the back of the end zone, and Stroman's really good in punt return. So, the kicking game will be challenged as well on Saturday. So, really good football team, and again, one that we expected that at this time of the year that we were going to get a great challenge from Virginia Tech. So. Last home game for our guys. I think Mike mentioned, 162 seniors that we had. Each year it seems like we have that many, but, we only got a few guys that are playing in their last game in terms of eligibility. So, again, from that standpoint, that will have minimum effect. This is really about, sending those guys out that have played and completed their eligibility with a win. So with that, we'll open up the questions.
Brian, I think arguably the last two games might be the two toughest teams you're facing. Do you look at that as a chance to show, I think you believe the team's better than the record shows. Do you look at this as a chance to show that maybe you are a better team than the record?
Yeah, I think that's always one thing that you take out of, playing two quality opponents. But I think more importantly is that you want all of the things that you worked so hard on all year to come together in these last two games. And that is, for us, finishing games, playing the game for us with a mental and physical toughness that, at times, was not at its best. It's now, coming together. And I think that, regardless of how we're perceived, I think the most important thing is to play the way we're capable of playing. That's what I'm looking at more than anything else, and that is, putting all these components together, learning how to win close games. Not giving up the cheap plays that we've given up occasionally during the year to keep teams in games, and playing, smart football, getting off the field on third down, staying on the field, red zone, those things. I'm looking for that. If we do that, I think people can make their own opinions as to what type of team we have.
And you mentioned on Sunday the fact that the team has to get used to playing traditional going from the option to traditional.
Yeah.
Some people who, outsiders might wonder, how tough is it? Because this is what your team plays all year long. What is the challenge of doing something, going from something, from the unused to the used to?
Well, for 2 weeks, we didn't play any of our coverages that we rep all camp and essentially run for the first, 9 weeks of the season. So, getting back to that. Same thing with the fronts. Those aren't fronts that are traditional fronts that we would normally run. So, for 2 weeks, you're running a system that only gets that work for option. And so it's an outlier from your playbook. It's a separate playbook in itself. So relative to the work that it gets, it's simply for those 2 weeks. And then sporadically, to try to install it, you're spending a little time on that in preseason camp, but a lion's share of your work is somewhere else in the playbook.
So how different is this week's schedule? You said you put more stuff in. How do you change your schedule?
Well, your first inclination is you want to go longer in your practice. But at this time in the season, that's, we've been on the road 2 weeks in a row, got back late. That's something that can't happen. So you have to be very smart in the way you integrate your practice schedule with, probably getting your defense a little bit more work with your offense. And that's how I'll go about doing it. Try to get speed on speed, our offense against our defense a little bit more than we normally would. And try to use as much of that as a stepping stone towards reacclimate, to acclimate them back into the football that they're used to. I think that's the best way to do it.
There's been a lot of talk saying, you have to win the last two to be bowl eligible. Last year, 3 teams went with 5-7 records. Would you be interested in going with the 5-7 record?
I haven't given it much thought, really, to be honest with you. I think that those scenarios I would address probably at the end of the year. Yeah.
Brian, here to your left. When Lou Holtz was here, he always talked about senior day, about how difficult it was for his seniors and team to block and tackle amidst the emotion and tears they were shedding on that day. And I know you said that most of the seniors have eligibility after this year, but what have you found in your previous 6 senior days? Have you had to manage the emotions of your upperclassmen?
Earlier, I had to. It's less and less because we don't have as many seniors, that have used up their eligibility. I'm crying right now because I don't have Will Fuller. He didn't have a senior day. Jalen Smith, Ronnie Stanley, Kavari Russell. Is that enough? Those guys, they're all juniors, and they really didn't have a true senior day. And then there's a number of guys that have eligibility remaining. So it's kind of changed a little bit, whereas my first couple of years, you knew who those guys were. Now it's a lot grayer as to who's a senior and who's not a senior. So it's changed a little bit from that respect.
But what about the guys that you know are out of eligibility? Do you find their demeanor on this day to be a little bit different?
I do a little bit, but it's never been too emotional. I think it's been just about right. I think that there's been a good balance of, really excited about a new chapter in their life, but a bit after the game, certainly reminiscing and a bit emotional. And I've always talked to them about there should be great enthusiasm, and that the emotion should kind of show itself after the game.
Speaking of guys that didn't have a senior day, I don't even know that we've brought up Steve Elmer's name this year.
Right.
Basically a 3-year starter at right guard.
Right.
And not to get you to say what the 3 guys that have played that position don't have, but what did you lose this year by not having Steve Elmer at your starting right guard?
an investment of time and investment in circumstances of game-like experience. All the things that you correct on Sunday had to be recorrected starting in game one. We lost a lot of that experience that had been gained with Steve. And remember, we played Steve as a young player, so there was a lot of equity placed in a young player making some mistakes and learning and having, to teach through that, and we had to kind of go through that process again.
Greer Martini has proven time and again against option teams. He's always ready for that call. Is there anything that he has done in progressing against those triple option teams that can take him to the next level as you get back to some more conventional offenses?
Yeah, he's in a different place mentally, a lot more confident as a football player, exhibiting. I don't know if I brought this up with this group here, but if you look at the Texas game and you watch film of the Texas game and you watch film of the Navy game of this past week, he was bending back ball carriers. He was at the line of scrimmage in a position where his physicality was clear. In the Texas game, that wasn't the case. And that's a mindset. That's a mental mindset that he has brought to his game. So he's just clearly in a different place, and that comes with confidence. That comes with where he is in our system, and he's playing really good football.
Sam Mustipher limped off late in the game Saturday. Is he available for this?
Yeah, nothing major like the high ankle sprain that he kind of dealt with for 3-4 weeks. He's in pretty good shape.
Brian, over here. Any update on Torrey Hunter and Daniel Cage since Sunday?
We'll get Torrey back out there. We'll keep, he'll be a day-to-day situation. Daniel Cage, it's, again, I don't want to just keep throwing cliches at you, but, when you go through a concussion, it's how he feels on a day-to-day basis. He'll now determine, where we go. So each day he'll check in with Dr. Leisler, and then we'll determine based upon how he feels where we take him. The next step for him is exercise and moving him through that, and then from there then into the practice setting. So as I mentioned with his meeting with Dr. Kutcher, everything is now him feeling good, and then when he feels good, we'll get him moving.
When we used to interview Jerron early in his career, he was pretty open about that there were times his mom had to get on him about his classwork and stuff and his football and everything else. How and when did he kind of turn the corner with that stuff?
When they awarded him his degree.
Okay. I know when he came in, there were recruiting analysts that felt like he would be better, or that he could be an All-America offensive lineman. Mm-hmm. And you guys kept him on defense and invested there. What did you see that made you want to make that investment? And do you feel like he's got an NFL future?
I think, when you talk about offensive linemen and defensive linemen, there's a makeup there that we look for, right or wrong. And it's just a makeup that I look for as it relates, and Harry certainly is involved in that as well. He wasn't here at the time that we recruited him, but there's a personality and makeup that we're looking for. And we thought his makeup best suited for him to be on the defensive line. As it relates to the NFL, I definitely think he has the opportunity and will have the chance to play in the NFL. He's any player that has the kind of athletic ability that he has in size that is required to be single blocked can make his presence felt. Is he a guy that's probably going to be on the field on 3 downs? No. And so But his size and his first step quickness and his length is certainly, for me, going to allow him to have a chance to play in the NFL.
You know, Cage will be, I believe, a senior next year, and I know that you can't talk about recruits, but with you becoming more of a three-down team that you've said that you were going to be moving forward, you know, how do you feel like the nose guard position is shaping up with Jerron leaving and with Daniel getting to the end of his career as well?
Yeah, we feel pretty good. I think we've got some guys that are becoming much more seasoned. Pete Mokwa, Brandon Tiasum, those guys in particular have done a nice job, have come along to the point where we believe that their time is really close. And again, I think you'll see us in some three down, but we'll be in some four down too that give us the flexibility to play both in three down and four down. But those two guys in particular, I think, you know, we feel like their future's ahead of them.
And last one from me, you know, you mentioned the small number of guys with expiring eligibility, and it almost seems like that's kind of where you're going to be for a while. If you're developing players, a lot of them are going to they're going to jump to the NFL, and,
Yeah.
and the guys that maybe are stuck behind younger guys are going to go grad transfer somewhere else.
Yes.
In that light, do you coach younger guys different? Do you take a philosophy of, you know, we're not going to have the elite players for 4 years, so maybe Kevin Stefferson and Chase Claypool have to get on the field faster?
Yeah, I think I kind of alluded to that a little bit, is that the need to play these kids, and that's who they are, they're kids play. We're going to be a young team. You know, we're not going to be Alabama. We're not going to have a bunch of older players playing for us, and we're not going to be some of the teams that are allowing them to mature at that level. We're going to have to play some younger players, and that's going to be the case here moving forward. So I have no problem with that. Kids are coming here to get their degree and play championship football, and they have great confidence that they can do that at an early age. And you mentioned a couple of guys that, you know, certainly can compete with anybody out there at what level and what their role is. As long as they can accept their role as a freshman, we'll keep playing them.
Right in the middle. Offensively, you really haven't had, other than the Hurricane, any slow starts. I think 6 games you scored in your first drive, a couple more you scored in your second drive. Do you use the script? We haven't really talked about that over the years, I guess. Do you adhere to a script to begin a game?
Yes. I mean, we script out 20 plays, provided they stay within the down and distance, you know, headings. In other words, if they get off into third downs, we have third down plays, or if they're not an opener, if it goes to 1st and 15 or 1st and 20.
How hard is it to go back to that throughout the game? Do you often go back to it throughout the game? And is it kind of something that we wouldn't really understand? Is it more of we can't go back because they've seen that and that's why it worked?
No, we like repeating plays, successful plays. No, I think that you can go back to those quite a bit, and they become certainly relevant. Some get scratched off the sheet during the game for different reasons. Might be personnel, might be a different front or coverage. But I would say, in answering your question, that those plays usually stay very relevant throughout the game. Yeah.
Brian, I want to follow up on Steve Elmer. While you know maybe you don't have him at right guard this year, has the message that you can go to Notre Dame, graduate in 3.5 years, and get a job in Washington D.C. has that resonated with recruits since he's left?
Well, I think that they know about it. They know that they have options when they come to Notre Dame, that the NFL is certainly, for most of those kids, their number one option. But there are a number of kids that also know that the door is open for them to do whatever, you know, it is that they're passionate about, whether it's the public sector, the private sector, Wall Street. And I think that is a great trait for us to continue to talk about in the recruiting process.
I guess maybe recruits, but not only their parents, too.
Well, certainly. right. I mean, if you just talk to the kids, all they're thinking about is, what NFL stadium they want to play in. If you're talking to the parents, it's a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is maybe the biggest compliment to Scott Daly that his name really has not been brought up
Yeah.
a whole lot in his 4 or 5 years here?
I would say that that's probably the best compliment is that when you do not talk about your long snapper, for 4 years, that's a pretty remarkable thing. To be that efficient, to be that consistent over 4 years is pretty amazing, what he's been able to accomplish here. And, it's unfortunate that he doesn't get as much of the talk, but it is one of those positions that, if you don't hear about him, he's doing a pretty good job.
The growth that he's had in the weight room specifically, and just his ability to kind of self-motivate, how
Yeah.
has that allowed him to stay consistent?
Well, I think more than anything else, it's helped him become a better long snapper because, size does matter a little bit, in a sense that even though he's not required to be a blocker, he's got to get big, so to speak. And, he's been able to put on strength. He's been able to be a guy that you can't overpower, by rushing through the opposite A gaps. And so it's definitely helped him, but it's going to help him moving on if he chooses to go and do this in the NFL. And it's also helped our football team.
I was going to say, have you had a long snapper turn pro in your coaching
I
tenure?
have, yep. Had
Who was-
one at Cincinnati who pretty successful career in the NFL.
Does Scott have some of the same traits?
He has he has all the physical traits necessary for him to play at the next level, and I think that certainly what they look for is somebody that can also do some coverage. Has some coverage ability. And I think Scott's a good enough athlete that he can get down there and cover.
I guess one of the guys who does have his eligibility expiring is James. And what has he meant to this program over 4 years, coming in as a wide receiver, moving to defense, becoming a captain?
Again, another model of consistency in terms of, you can count on him week in and week out. There's a guy that, not many people talk about as to, and I don't even know if he wants to play in the NFL, but, I would put him on my team because he'd be a valuable special teams player. He's a guy that can do a lot of jobs for you. And I bet if somebody's interested in him on the roster, he's got a great chance because of his ability to do so many jobs in special teams. And he's just been so valuable to us this year as a leader too. He's been a very, very strong leader.
I guess the wide receiver to linebacker, I know there's a safety stop in between,
Yeah.
but that's not a transition that a lot of people make. How does that speak to his football IQ?
Yeah, it's interesting. It was not an easy transition for him because, James was, it wasn't that, football was everything, coming up for him. He was learning football as well. And the transition wasn't easy for him, but he became a student of the game, spent a lot of time in the film room, and really, I think he made himself into the player that he is.
Thanks.
Brian, in the middle here. With so many guys who have not exhausted their eligibility, do you feel like you have a pretty good sense that you know which guys that can come back, want to come back, and will be coming back?
Yeah, I do.
At what point do you have those conversations with those guys?
I don't have them directly. I have other people have those indirect conversations. I think I save those for after the season, but I have enough people that are part of the staff that can have those conversations. So I get a pretty good sense of who those people are.
Some of those guys share that information. Mike McGlinchey is one of them, but is that something that you have to wait for the university to share, or do you feel like you could let us know who you think is coming back?
Mike McGlinchey shared that with you. Is that what you're referring to?
With all of us, yeah. A couple.
Yeah. No, the other guys will sit down, and I'll have to have one-on-one conversations with them before I talk publicly about who those players might be.
No, you said you were going to wait till after the year to talk about perhaps accepting a bowl bid if you were 5-7, but you guys could also go 6-6 and earn a bowl game. To what extent does that option motivate your guys right now?
Well, they want to keep playing. Yeah, they definitely want to keep playing, and you know, we've talked about the importance of each game, and certainly these next 2 weeks being very, very important. But you know, look, we understand. More importantly, that we want to play the game, and how we play the game is more important than really anything else, because we're playing it for right now and we're playing for next year, and I think we're starting to figure out how to play, and you know, some people might say, well, you know, it wasn't Alabama that you played, it was Army, but that really doesn't matter to me. It's really in how we played the game that I look at, and we played that game differently than any other game that we played all year. You know, we played with an edge in that game that we hadn't played with all year, and if we continue to play with that kind of edge, we can be a really good team. And so I'm more interested, and I think I've had this question posed in a couple of different ways. I'm more interested, going to a bowl game is important. How we're perceived, you know, is important. I'm more interested in playing the game the right way. And if we do that, that's job one for me.
Brian, center field here. With Evans and his mobility, what kind of problems does that pose for you in terms of being able to not only pressure him, but defend him?
You know, we've seen a lot of quarterbacks this year that have that kind of dual, you know, ability. So, you know, our plan, you know, defensively is there'll be times where, you know, we'll have to keep an eye on him within our defensive structure. And then others, you just have, you know, pass rush responsibilities, and he'll be part of, you know, he'll be one of the hats that we're going to have to, you know, obviously have on him. So it's college football today where you have that quarterback that can be that dual threat, and we're pretty familiar with that kind of offense.
I know you're not big on time of possession as a stat, but Georgia Tech was able to use that and keep the ball out of Virginia Tech's hands.
Yeah.
Is a ball control offense something that you look to use against a team like this?
Yeah, you know, I'm more about efficiency and scoring points. If you're ineffective, punting the football, not scoring points, turning it over, you know, to me, if you hold on the ball for 6-7 minutes, but you got nothing to show for it, that's where time of possession doesn't mean anything to me. So it has to be met with efficiency and offense, and efficiency equals putting points on the board. So the best way to do it would be, you know, long drives and scoring points. But I think both have to happen. And I would take, you know, the 4 or 5 drives we had against Navy that equaled 7 points, in keeping them off the field would be just fine with me.
How rare is it to see a kid like Evans, who was a JUCO player for the last 2 years, blossom the way he has in his first year at this level?
I don't think it's – I've seen it before. You know, if there's a real fit and you know, Justin Fuentes knew what he was looking for, you know, and he's run this offense, and, you know, he's got a pretty good pedigree of working with quarterbacks. And you know, obviously, he knew that this kid would fit in his scheme of things. You know, Aaron Rodgers coming out of junior college came on the scene pretty quickly. There's a number of guys. You really need to know the quarterback position and what you're looking for. You can't just take a flyer on a junior college kid. This was really, you know, a head coach who's tuned into the quarterback position and knew what he was looking for. If you have all those things working for you, I think you can do that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Brian over here. What can you do? How would you describe the state of the confidence of your young defensive backs right now? Because I think they've had a couple of good weeks, you know, in these last 2 weeks here, and because it's not, it seems unusual, I guess, that they would be able to have such a noticeable jump against these option teams where they're not being tested in traditional ways, if you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think that they gained a great deal of confidence, probably, off of the Miami game where they were able to defend a lot of balls down the field, gained some more confidence, obviously, by just simply getting on the field more. They were a confident bunch when they came in, and they needed that confidence reaffirmed by making some plays. And they've all been able to make plays. So regardless of whether it was an option team or not, they've been able to make plays one-on-one, whether it be in the run game or the pass game, and that's put them in a pretty good spot right now. They are who they are. They may not make, all the plays, but what you see is what you get from those guys. They're a pretty confident group. They'll go out and compete. Virginia Tech's going to make some plays, but they're going to make some plays too.
And then just kind of following up on the bowl question, it's always important for the brand and recruiting and the state of the program and all that, but is it even more of a sort of pressing issue this year when you have so many young guys and they're starting to play well, and it's almost like we just don't want to put those guys on the shelf, for a couple months when they're really rolling at this point at the end of the season?
Look, as I said, if I had to give you the priorities, it's more important how we play. I want to win too. But, if you look at, what our options are, we're going to practice for about 12 days, and then that's it. And then we're going to play one game. So, they're not going to be inactive, very long, one way or the other. So I'd like to practice. I want to go to a bowl game. I want to win our last two games. But I'm not losing sleep over it. What I'm concerned about the most is how we play. And that's the most important thing, because those are the most important elements on what we've had to go through this year. And I want to make sure that how we play is going to be reflective of where we finish and how we build that for next year.
Thank you.
Hey, Brian, up here. I know you've gotten a lot of questions about your young guys, but I wanted to know if maybe there are some specific examples you could give, maybe mistakes that they're not making, that they were making kind of at the beginning of the year that they're not now, just like the progression of the young guys from beginning of season now that you've noticed.
Well, I wouldn't put it on the young guys that they made a lot of mistakes. I would say that there were coaching mistakes, there were veteran mistakes, there were enough mistakes to go around. I think if we look at some of the younger players in particular, I would probably just say just being confident and being decisive. Once they became more confident and decisive, they started to play with a different demeanor, and I think that's for the young guys. And when I say young guys, I mean the first-time players. For other players, just more of an attention to detail, cleaning up mistakes. And then I think just having a better sense of, who our football team was, from a coaching standpoint. All those three things are the factors in terms of where we are today.
As far as the first-time players go, was there a game maybe as a collective that you noticed that they kind of flipped a switch or something, or is it kind of everyone is different and you noticed them all maybe one by one or something?
Well, first of all, the defense has the most young players, right? There's a lot of inexperience on offense, but the most young players in terms of freshmen, they're on defense. And I would say that when we just let them all play against Syracuse and maybe get their nose bloodied a little bit, but just go out and play, and then come back and I think since then have just gotten better each and every week. I think that was probably the turning point. Just go play. We'll take our lumps, and then that has continued to accelerate to the point where I think they're 15th in the country in pass defense, at this point. So that's the defensive side. I think the offensive side of the ball, they just had to get into more scenarios and situations and experience it to be more consistent. You know, if you take away the Hurricane game, you know, we really had one below standard offensive performance, and that was Stanford. You know, so by and large, that's just been, you know, experiencing situations on the offensive side of the ball.
Coach, just, you know, kind of for your seniors, you know, how trying has the season been for them, and, you know, how much would it mean for you to be able to send them out with a win, you know, in their last home game?
Well, we certainly want to do that. I mean, you know, they've been resilient. I think that that's how I would put it. They have not cracked at all. They've been positive. They have been, they've worked harder than I wouldn't say any group that I've had, but as hard as any senior group that I've had in keeping this football team together, working hard every day. So you want their last home game to be a win. And everybody's going to work to that end. There's no question about it. And they are too. And they'll do everything that they can, as will everybody in this room that is part of this football team. So I'm not concerned about that. Everybody will be fighting their tails off, you know, for these seniors because they're respected.
And what does it kind of say about your senior leadership, specifically the captains, and being able to kind of hold this team together through a difficult season?
Well, they did a good job. I mean, but they, you know, they did it by example. The hardest workers during our toughest times were Isaac Rochelle and James Onawalu in particular, those two guys. Not that Torrey wasn't, and not that Mike was not. Those guys got another year of eligibility. But those two guys in particular, Rochelle and Onawalu, were unbelievable. And it was, I think, crucial when we made a change defensively, played all those freshmen. We needed guys to lead by example. We didn't need a guy yelling and screaming, and those two guys led by example.
Brian, you mentioned Isaac right there. Just overall, what has he meant to this program for the last 4 years?
Well, he's been a model of consistency. I mean, you could count on him every day. You could count on him doing the right things off the field, in the classroom. He's never on a list. I mean, I could give you about 10 things that you could count on him in terms of being in the community, all the things that you would want from a Notre Dame football player. On the field, he has steadily gotten better each and every year. And that I'm most proud of, that he has taken the coaching and the personal pride to want to be a better football player each and every year, to the point now where he's a really good football player. Never begged out on assignments, has never turned down the opportunity to take on the tough jobs, whether he's an inside guy or an outside guy, unselfish. Yeah, he's been everything that we've hoped for.
And you mentioned Torrey having another year. Do you expect him back next year?
I don't know that for certain. You know, we all know he's been drafted in baseball. You know, I think that all of our guys have great options, and you know they're smart guys. They'll sit down and weigh their options, and then we'll make a decision and get it out to everybody once we know.
And then you mentioned Fuller, Jalen not having their senior day because they're juniors. Have you thought about the possibility of this being the last game in Notre Dame Stadium for Deshaun Kaiser?
No, I haven't, but that's another possibility as well. You know, when you have really good football players that have the opportunity to go to the NFL, that's going to be a reality here at Notre Dame. And You know, I'd love for everybody to stay and use their 4 years of eligibility and have their degree and do all that. But the reality of it is, those situations are going to keep coming up.